What's up, everybody? Welcome to another summer edition of Morning Cup of Hockey presented by Betway. If you're going to place a bet, bet on Betway. Please play responsibly. And remember, you must be 19 years of age or older. That's Colby Cohen. I'm Johnny Lazarus. I can't believe that we're basically in August already. Not sure how we got here so quickly, but it has been a weird timing summer. It feels like it's taking forever, but it feels like it's also flying by. I don't really know how to explain it, but Colby, everything going well with you? We got a pretty fun episode today. We got Scott Laughton coming on from the Philadelphia Flyers. So going to be a lot of fun to hear from him and the Flyers' exciting offseason. Michkov getting a lot of attention. But before we get into any of that, what's going on with you?
Are you going to ask him a fun one?
Do you have three fun ones written down.
You have three fun ones written down. No, look, we actually have some hockey news the last couple of days.
Yeah,
and especially we have hockey news that pertains to you and your world. And your top pair defenseman, Ryan Lindgren, who was headed for arbitration, something we talked about. I think we talked about the fact that we didn't really think it would get there. It usually doesn't. But today, actually, the news came down. Ryan Lindgren, 1 year, $4.5 million. He next year now is a UFA, so he is aging out of his RFA status with this 1 year deal. And, you know, I'm just curious because you're the Rangers guy. I see you arguing with people on Twitter all day.
I'm probably wrong, honestly, about most of it, what I've been arguing about today.
You tried to start with me this morning, but I don't take your bait in the summer. And then, you know, now you're on to Ryan Lindgren and the rest of Blue Shirt Nation. So I'm just curious for you. You're sitting there. This deal comes across 1 year, $4.5 million. Next year, you're most likely losing this guy to free agency. You know, and especially with what Igor is potentially going to get paid and where that money is going to come from. You know, the cap will continue to go up. So that is part of it. But are you feeling good about the fact that, you know, Ryan Lindgren at $4.5 million is one of two on your top pair?
Well, I feel good that's only for 1 year. You know, I was vocal that I thought getting a guy, you know, a guest on our show, obviously it's a friend of mine, like Mario Ferraro, who would be a cheaper Ryan Lindgren, you know, for maybe 2 years would be a cool trade target for the Rangers to go after. I didn't think that the Rangers were going to move on from Lindgren, even though I thought it would be in their best interest to do that.
Why do you say why? Give me your reasons for that, thinking they should move on from him.
I have nothing against Ryan Lindgren. I think
it's not personal. You don't have to qualify it.
No, of course. I'm just saying that. Not personal at all, but just with the way he plays the game and his style, you know, I just don't think it's a safe bet to give him term, which is essentially what they did. You know, they gave him 1 year. Had they given him 3 or 4 years at this number, I would have hated it. But because it's 1 year, I would have hated it for sure.
Interesting.
I mean, you look at it also, and yes, while Ryan Lindgren is a top pair defenseman, I think a lot of that has to do with his chemistry and relationship with Adam Fox. I mean, these guys have known each other for so long now, going back to their days at the NTDP together. And I think the comfortability has a lot to do with the fact of why he's on that top pair. You know, are we seriously sitting here and saying that Ryan Lindgren is, you know, $2 million or double the price more effective than Braden Schneider? Like, I don't think so. You know, Schneider is getting $2.2 million now for the next 2 years. I don't think Lindgren is double that. Do you?
Well, look, I think Lindgren has played in bigger moments and has a lot more experience. I also think there's something to be said for the players that know how to play with the elite players. You know, knowing how to play with a guy like Adam Fox, who is a one-of-a-kind type of player. You know, Fox is in that top elite group of players, and all those guys are a little different. Like Makar and Fox are a little bit different. Hughes and Fox are a little bit so knowing how to play with that type of player, and I think having the hockey IQ to do it, I think is something that is probably not talked about enough. So do I think he's $2 million more valuable than Schneider? At the moment, I do, Johnny. I don't know if I'll still believe that in 2 years from now. I think it'll be interesting to see where his minutes are this year, and kind
better word might be caliber of player, if that makes sense.
Well, how about this, right? We're talking about a defensive defenseman, a simple defensive defenseman, makes the simple plays, plays physical below the dots, puts his body in harm's way more than probably anybody else in the league. I mean, it's actually,
yeah. I think that's a lock. I think he is the number one.
Cringe and look the other way every time he goes into the corner because he's god awful at protecting himself. Like I put some of that on Ryan Lindgren, by the way. I think he's terrible at protecting himself.
I actually saw a funny comment when he signed the deal. Someone replied, "I bet he got a paper cut while signing it." He's just it's pretty funny.
Look, I think as a restricted free agent, I don't think you're ready to let him walk for nothing. I think you made a decent point this year, that it will be interesting to see what some of these 1-year deals turn into at the trade deadline. But the other thing I will say is when you've got a team that's got cup aspirations and you're in the top the top of your division, which I fully expect the Rangers to be, I think that you're not trading guys who have 1-year deals if they're valuable to your team, right? And so even if Ryan Lindgren isn't planning on re-signing, let's say they start having conversations on a long-term deal, you're still not moving him at the deadline if you're a cup contender, no matter what. You're not doing it because of chemistry and because of the way that he fits with Adam Fox. I think the number is reasonable, Johnny. And here's what I'll say. Like, think about this. Who's the most premier defensive defenseman in your opinion in the NHL? I already kind of know who I think. Who would you say? Like defensive defenseman, a guy that we really don't talk about for offense. Now, he's a better player than Lindgren, but I'm just curious who your thoughts are. And if you want, I can give you mine while you think. Is that what you want to do?
I mean, I was going to say Forsling right now. Just
okay. Forsling, fine. How about Slavin to me?
He's a popular answer.
I think Slavin is probably one of the best defensemen in the NHL that's not offensive. He is one of the best defensemen in the NHL that's not offensive. He's a top pair type of player when Team USA puts their rosters together, for World Cup and for the Olympics. He's a top 4. He's going to play against McDavid or whoever, McKinnon, whoever the top players are on other teams, right? He only makes 6 was the big extension that he just got. So you look at Lindgren and you're like, okay, this guy logs 20 plus minutes a night. He plays against the other team's best players. I think $4.5 million, Johnny, I think it's the right number. I think he probably got a little bit more money because less money. If he takes a longer deal, I think the cap number goes down. Yeah. Right. If he said, all right, I want 3 to 4 years, I think that number goes down to like $4 million. But on a 1-year deal with 0 job security, that AAV usually goes up. I mean, that's just usually how it works. So I think he gets a little more money in his pocket, but I think the Rangers get exactly what they want and in a 1-year deal situation. And now it just basically buys them time to decide what they want to do with him long term. Because I truly don't think Chris Drury actually knows what he wants to do with him long term, because I think this year is the massive question mark for the New York Rangers. Yeah. This is the year of shit or get off the pot, because you've got Panarin's contract coming up. You've got, is it Kreider coming up?
No, Kreider and Zibanejad have like another 3 more years.
So Panarin and Trouba are the big ones that are coming up.
But you also have Lafreniere and Keandre Miller as RFAs next summer, and you have Shesterkin that you have to pay.
So this team could look quite a bit different when we're having this conversation next summer. Yeah. So I think you basically just bought yourself time to figure out what you want to do with Ryan Lindgren.
But let's say the Rangers are sitting in 3rd in the Metropolitan Division come deadline time, which is possible. Like Carolina is going to be good again. They are. I know they don't have Gensel, and maybe they made some changes, but they're always good. They're always competitive. Yep. They're going to be good and competitive again. And the Devils have gotten better on paper. Yep. Last year they had a lot of injuries, and shit that didn't go their way. Like those are 2 teams that could easily be in front of the Rangers if, let's say, once again the Rangers have some injury problems. Like not everything will go right for the Rangers. Right. There's going to be moments.
But let me ask you, and so you're saying if they're in 3rd, you're thinking Ryan Lindgren becomes a trade target.
I'm saying, do you really go all in and go for it?
Yeah, and I'll tell you
have a lot of things to figure out next year.
Let me tell you why.
Yeah.
Igor Shesterkin, number 1.
Yep.
Number 2, This is a team that's had a lot of playoff success. Like, I know as a Ranger fan, you're sitting there and you're like, we didn't win the last game of the year. So as Billy Bean said, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. If you've seen Moneyball, but you're talking about a couple of conference finals here in the last couple of years. This is a team that's knocking on the door. We've seen other teams have to learn how to win by losing. And so I think that the New York Rangers are one of these teams now that don't have to be as concerned with their seeding going into playoffs. You really don't. I think they're a team that, as long as they're having a good season and their players are healthy, they don't need a President's Trophy. Okay, that's not the goal. That's not the concern. They don't need to finish at the top of the Eastern Conference Finals. They can win on the road in the playoffs. They've done that, right? Yeah. They've won games on the road. So, and they have Igor Shesterkin, who can get medieval in the playoffs and can win you multiple series, which we've seen. So that's why I don't think, as long as this team's not in 9th or 10th place, I think Ryan Lindgren on this 1-year deal, the risk you do have is that you don't win and then he walks for nothing. And here's what I'll say. He's valuable, but he's not fetching you some king's ransom type of.
No, return. Of course not. But I think I tweeted out, like, I wouldn't be surprised if the Rangers sold at the deadline or were sellers. And I meant just like seeing these names go, these guys that are on 1-year deals. Like, you know, Riley Smith now is on a 1-year, $3.75 million deal.
But not if he's, but again, if he's producing and they're in a playoff spot, these 1-year deal players are not going anywhere.
And they're not going to have a lot of cap space to work with, though, at the deadline. I think they have less than $1 million in projected cap space right now.
But remember, you get, you know, as you get closer, you accrue. But here's the thing that you just have to remember is if these guys are performing, they're not getting traded. Now, if they're not performing, that's different. If Riley Smith's on the 4th line at the trade deadline, sure, you'd look to move him and bring somebody else in. You want to sell on him. But look at the last number of Stanley Cup champions that had players on expiring contracts.
Well,
they don't
Panthers
move
had a lot. Yeah,
they don't move them. When you're in, because you don't care what happens if you win. You just don't. So, you know, overall, Johnny, I thought it was a good deal. I found some information and I typed it out and I have it here with me. And what I did was I looked at what teams going into this next season are spending on their defensive groups. Okay. I went through all the playoff teams, plus I added New Jersey and Detroit and Minnesota. Right. And it's interesting what teams are spending on their back end. And the New York Rangers are spending $29,659,000, right? They're actually, of all the teams,
where do they rank?
The only team on here that is spending more money than them on their back end, there's 2 teams of the 19 teams, okay? Vegas, $31,044,000, okay? And then you've got Washington spending $36,87,000. They're the only team
spending more. $36 million on their back end?
No, $30,687,000. Sorry, $30,687,000. Okay. Now the Bruins are right behind the Rangers at $29,575,000. The Rangers, I said, were $29,659,000. So that's very comparable. And again, if you're within a few $100,000, somebody gets called up, somebody gets sent down. These are projections based on how you think the season's going to start. But it was interesting to go through the exercise, like Florida, 20,100,000, okay, 100,000. So Florida was one of the lowest teams. Now, granted, think of who they had to say bye-bye to. Yeah. They had to say bye-bye to a number of players. Carolina, 28 million, Devils, 25 million, Islanders, 23, Toronto, 23. So there's some of the lower ends. Detroit was really low at 16 million, but Mo Seider is unsigned, right? And you got to think Mo Seider's coming in at $8.5 million. Yeah. So that puts them up into the 20s. Colorado, 29,075,000. I told you Vegas was at 31 million. Edmonton, 26 million. Nashville, 27 million. Vancouver, 25. Dallas, 23. LA, 27.
What's San Jose at?
Winnipeg, I didn't look at San Jose because they're not a play.
Yeah.
I only looked at playoff teams.
Okay.
Winnipeg, 21,975,000. Minnesota is only spending 20 million on their back end. Okay. But the Faber, you're getting an $8.5 million player, but you're getting him at 925. So we'll get into Faber here next and talk about it. But with Minnesota, they've got one more year with 14.7 million in dead cap space. So even though they're only spending 20 million, you kind of have to factor in all of the dead cap money for them because they just can't spend it. It's not that they're forward heavy. They just don't have it. Right. So then I broke it down even more and I looked at teams' top pairs, Johnny, and what they're committed to, their top pairs. I looked at line charts on Daily Faceoff.
Yeah.
If you had to guess, okay, of those playoff teams, top pair, Taves, Makar, Petro, Hannafin, Ekholm, Bouchard, Forsling, Ekblad, McAvoy, Lindholm, Riley, Tanev, Yossi, Shea, Hughes, Hronek, Fox, Lindgren, Heiskanen, Lindell, Doughty, Anderson, Morrissey, DeMello, Slavin, Burns, Hedman, McDonough, Brodin, Faber. Which of those pairs do you think is the most expensive pair in the NHL?
Does this all like tie into Lindgren somehow?
Well, yeah, I want to kind of point out where Lindgren and Fox sit on this chart because, you know, $1 million matters, you know,
my initial instinct would be like the most expensive top D pair would be Makar and Taves.
Right. So they're at the top at 16 and a quarter.
Okay.
And then right under them is Petro and Hannafin at 16.15. Fox and Lindgren are at $14 million. They're probably middle of the pack as far as this goes. Lindholm and McAvoy sit at 16 million. Riley and Tanev in Toronto, 12 million. That's low. Yossi, Shea, 16 million. Hughes, Hronek, 15 and a quarter. So Fox and Lindgren are kind of in the middle to the bottom half of that group as far as what they make. And that discount that you kind of get with Ryan Lindgren being on your top pair at only $4.5 million, that's another $2 million, Johnny, that you can either give to Igor, not have a 975 or whatever.
But don't you think this is all kind of a setback too? Because you have Trouba making 8. Like,
well, for sure, but that's
you know
why
I mean?
that's why I did the fully committed. And you're right. That's why they're so high on that fully committed list, because you've got Trouba at 8 and you've got Fox at 9.5, right? And Trouba's on the third, really a third pair guy now. So you're right, it does. But I'm just saying, if you move on from Trouba, there is a way where you can keep Ryan Lindgren on a reasonable deal and have a lot of extra money kind of to spread around. So that was kind of just, I just wanted to see what guys were making and how it all matched up against each other. I was pretty surprised with the personnel that New York has, that they are so high. Like they're third or fourth most expensive decor in the NHL.
Well, it's because they had to pay Fox. They had to.
Yeah.
No choice.
And it's well deserved. $9.5 million is cheap for Adam Fox.
Of course, but now they have, you know, Lindgren and Trouba making $12.5 million this year.
The Trouba money is the problem. That's the problem right there.
Yeah,
that's
a problem.
Because everybody else on the Rangers decor is
making the appropriate amount that they should
accordingly. And I don't think the Rangers I think the Rangers decor is a good one. I don't think they're average. I think they're good.
Yeah.
I don't think that they're I wouldn't put them in the top 5 or 6 decors in the NHL, but probably after that. I think I think they're probably a top 10 decor in the league, but I think that they would be probably between, 6 and 10 and not 1 and 5.
Who'd you say is the top 3?
Well, I think that for sure Vegas I'd put up there. I think you have to give real consideration to Nashville's decor now. I think Roman Josi. I think Colorado's decor is right there as well.
Is there for me with the way those guys move.
Colorado, I just said Colorado would be in that top 3. I think there's arguments to be made with Boston. I think you've got McAvoy, Zadorov, Lindholm, Carlo, Lorai. I mean, I think that's a, in my opinion, it's a deeper blue line than the New York Rangers have. It's deeper.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have an $8 million hole on the Bruins back end. So again, I think Dallas's Decor is really good, but it's probably, and they don't spend a ton of money on it, but I think the Rangers Decor is better than Dallas is. I do. I'd have them ahead of Dallas.
The Capitals are as high as they are. Like,
well, let's fit. Why don't you throw Washington's defensive lines up and we can look? Because here's the thing.
What is Carlson making?
I mean, this is a very good defensive group now. I mean, they went out and got Chychrun and Matt Roy. Sandin's a good player. Van Riemsdyk is as good a third pair defenseman as you could have in the NHL. Carlson has been a stud for a long time. I mean, that's a very nicely balanced group of 6. And Carlson makes $8 million.
Yeah.
But again, it's when guys sign. If Adam Fox was up right now for a new deal, he'd make $11 million a year.
Yeah.
He'd make more than 9.5. So Hughes only makes $7.8 million because of when he signed it. His next deal, it'll be monstrous. So again, I just wanted to go through the exercise. We don't have a ton going on. I wanted to see where the Rangers fell based on this. I wanted to see what other teams were doing. Not surprised to see Toronto on the lower part of teams that have spent on their back end that are playoff teams, because Toronto is a playoff team. They're just in the bottom echelon of, let's say, the 16 teams of how much money that they spent on their back end. We know why. And that could change if they make a trade and brought in a guy like Shea Theodore. That could certainly change. So, look, Lindgren, not the only guy, Johnny, that got a new deal. Brock Faber, big ticket. Still got 1 year left on his contract at $925. He's only played 80 or so 80 or so games in the National Hockey League, 2 out of college. And then, if he might have played 82 this year. He might have played every game. What did you make of that deal? Because that's a big deal for a guy who's played 80 games.
Well, speaking of signing a contract, when you sign it, I think in 3 or 4 years, we'll be talking about this deal as if it's a steal. Right. I think you're getting a kid who, I think we had him to win the Rookie of the Year at a certain point, maybe till the very end, right?
Listen,
he had a great year.
I still will die on that hill. That kid was incredible.
He was playing 26, 27 minutes a night as a rookie defenseman.
Listen, he was incredible.
And he has an offensive upside too. And Minnesota, say what you want about them. I know Chris Kelleher in Vegas gave me shit because I called them mid. I called them
their assistant general manager called Jonny out we were standing talking with Bill Guerin and Chris Kelleher as we were leaving dinner at Beauty in Essex. And Chris Kelleher, the assistant GM, had heard the clip of Jonny chirping them and actually called him out to his face.
I loved it. I called them the Minnesota Wild. And he actually said that he thought it was funny. So I will chalk that up as a point for me. But, Z Boyum, right? That's a big,
massive draft. I mean,
he's going to be their blue line is going to be strong.
They're going to have Faber and Bouillon on their top pair in 2 or 3 years, and it's going to be a studly top pair.
Yeah. Again, though, that's a team that still has been very average for so long. And you look at their blue line right now, even with Faber and Spurgeon, Bogosian's their third pair right-handed shot.
They're not,
their blue line's not so strong right now.
Yeah. They're not a playoff team. And my opinion, it's really hard to overcome $14.7 million in dead money, which is what they have for one more year. After that, they've got 4 years with $1.6 million in dead cap money, which is nothing with the way the cap is going. So, I hope Bill Guerin can make his way out of this season. I think he will. Minnesota's never been they don't do musical chairs with GMs. And I think that knowing he's got that much money in dead cap space, I mean, that's $14.7 million. I mean, we're talking about, multiple players within your top 4 or top 6, depending on how you wanted to do it. I mean, that is life-changing type of money. So
did you watch the clip of Guerin giving Faber the contract?
No, I didn't watch it. I didn't even see it.
It was awesome. It was a great message. He said, you're getting this contract because of the player you are and who you are. Don't try to be something that you're not. We're giving this to you because of who you are. And I think the message she was saying was like, sometimes guys get this ticket and try to be something that they're not because they think they have to live up to a certain amount of money. You are getting this because of who you are right now.
Yeah.
I thought that was just a great thing.
Because I think what we do is we see contracts like this come after 84 games and we say, oh, they're paying him based on his potential, not based on what he's done. Yeah. I don't agree. I think he played like an $8.5 million defenseman last year, right? Mm-hmm. And remember, his contract kicks in not this year. He's $925 this year, next year, which means the cap's going up hopefully another $4 million next year. Yeah. So it's even better. So I really thought that the deal was good, the Faber deal. I'm a big fan of him. I don't think it's an overpay. I don't think you have to, if he never gets better and stays the same, I think he's an $8.5 million defenseman. So it was good work by Bill Guerin, our drinking buddy from Vegas. Jonny is already on a nickname basis with him. Naturally, that's how the kids do it these days. They meet someone once. And
I'm boys with everybody.
They start dropping their nickname after meeting them once. I guess, that's how it goes. So
I'm going to do it again right now in 10 seconds when we bring on our guest, Scott Laughton.
Those are the big defensive signings that have happened. There have been some big forward signings, and actually the Flyers have been in the news quite a bit over the last week. One of them was for Travis Konechny's massive deal that he got, but we're going to pause on that kind of stuff right now because Scott Laughton is here. We're going to patch him into the show. We're going to talk to him for a little bit. He's a perfect guy to ask about this stuff because this is the lifeblood of the Philadelphia Flyers that we have right here. So, Lots, we appreciate you giving us a little bit of your time in summer. I know you're a popular guy, so hopefully we don't keep you too long. I'm sure your phone will be ringing for half the episode here. The boys will be wanting to know what
you look tan as shit, Scotty. Where are you?
Thank you. I spent a little time up by the lake this weekend, so that was nice, kind of recharge. But thanks for having me on, boys.
Yeah, we appreciate it. I'm calling you Lots.
I do look like I got some good color.
Yeah, you got some great color over there. I want to kind of give you shit right off the bat. I've only met you like 2 or 3 times, but I feel like we've had good banter every time. And I love to create narratives on this show. So I'm going to give you something that I'm looking to create right now. There was a clip last week of Danny Briere and Keith Jones going to the airport to pick up Matvei Michkov. I noticed that there was not one Flyers player there at the airport. You're an assistant captain for the team. So now I'm going to say, are we questioning the leadership of the Flyers going into next season that the players didn't go pick up Michkov?
You're such an asshole, Jonny. You're such an asshole. These guys are in Canada. They're all over the place. Quit it with your narrative-based questions.
I don't even know if Scotty heard it. Do you hear me, Scotty?
We might. Sorry, boys. I cut out there. I can't hear much, but no. Yeah, you're back now.
Oh, all right. Oh, okay. I thought that was a bit.
No. It's probably
sorry. Everyone was frozen on my screen. I couldn't see anything.
Oh, no way. All right. Look, so I got to do the whole thing again?
It's probably a good thing. Go ahead.
No. You cut off at when he picked up Michkov, so you can go from there.
So I was saying, I noticed that there was not one player at the airport. You're an assistant captain of the team. Don't you think there should be some players there to pick up this new prodigy for the Flyers? What's going on with the leadership in Philadelphia?
They were there. They were there for his first pitch. I saw Joel Farabee, a couple other guys, Yorkie, Forrester. So they're there. They're there in the gym supporting them. All the guys that stay local. But I don't know. We got to call up Coots and see what's going on.
Were the guys giving him shit for that first pitch? That was rough.
Oh, that was rough.
I got a bad shoulder myself, so I can't say much. My throwing arm, I'm a second baseman in softball, and that's about the extent of it. So.
Well, look, I think that anybody who lives here in Philly knows that if they need a heavy hitter, they would have just sent Lots right to Russia to negotiate the buyout. That's what they would have used Lots for. They wouldn't have had him at the airport. He would have been doing the heavy hitting work in Russia to get this kid to come over here. But, look, we could talk about him the whole episode. I'm more curious from you as a guy who's been in Philadelphia since, a long time. Like, you're coming up on 10 years Having played games for the teams. I mean, you played with Danny Briere. I think your first year, you and Danny were even teammates, and you've seen different coaches come through, different GMs come through. I think the Flyers are known as one of the most loyal organizations there is. So I'm just curious for you, Lots, as a guy who every coach always seems to love because of the way that you play, what's your relationship been like, and what's the adjustment been like with John Tortorella since he came to Philadelphia, and he's been kind of changing the perception and sort of the way things are done, at least, to the media and to the fans?
Yeah, I think it's been huge. I think you hear it in the media all the time from different people, but he holds you accountable every day. And it's been huge for our young guys, but not only our young guys, our older guys too. And I think it goes a long way in the room when sometimes someone gets benched, but you understand, and older guys are getting it, younger guys are getting it, and everyone's on the same page. So I think guys really appreciate that. And obviously bringing in Danny and Jonesy, Dan Hilferty's been huge in the organization. The way they connect with the fans, just everything around the rink. I mean, you don't have that very often where they're coming in the room shaking your hand after every game. And that's what Mr. Snyder used to do. And they do it. And that really feels like a family, and somewhere where I've been my whole career, and somewhere where I would love to stay, and I love it there. I love everything about it. But those guys have been huge, and Torts, I think the biggest change is probably training camp. I think that one, you're thinking about that one all summer. So hopefully we can play deep into the summer this year, and maybe get a lap or two off the Torts test.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's been a while. I mean, since there's been playoff hockey in Philly. Obviously, you count the bubble, but the fans haven't been able to see, playoff hockey in quite some time. But something that, I talked to you about, Morgan Frost, Bobby Brink, during the season when you guys came to New York, I think with like 3 games to go, you can really feel the joy in the Flyers locker room. Like, the Flyers and I'd say the Panthers are probably 2 of the more fun rooms I've been in, like in a post-morning skate or a post-game. And I'm curious if that drama that, obviously there was a lot of drama surrounding the Flyers this year away from the rink, but if that almost brought you guys together and brought you even closer. Some of the Torch clips we talked about on here and we broke down here during the season, but I imagine you guys are kind of sending it to each other and having a good laugh in the group chat and whatnot when he says some ridiculous shit or calls out a reporter. I got to imagine it's a good thing for you guys to bond over.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Torch too. I think he has your back, and the stuff that went on with Hazy and all that. He doesn't even play for the team anymore, and he's still kind of doing that. Yeah, so you know exactly. Well, maybe you don't know exactly what he's going to say, but you know exactly that he has your back, and that he's going to fight for you, and that's how it feels around the organization. And like you said, we have a good time. We come to work every day. Torch is good during the year at giving us some days off and some rest, and you come to work every day, and that's the number one rule. So yeah, it's great. We have a good mixture of young and older guys, and guys that are the younger guys that kind of have to take the next step here for us to do anything. But it's exciting, and we're starting to get some energy back in the building, and playing hard. It was really heartbreaking at the end of the year. I think that was probably the toughest year for me, being in a playoff spot since January. You go on a skid like that, but it was even before the skid where you have big metro games that you need to win and kind of solidify yourself, and we didn't do that. So it took a while to get over that, and to not wish that you were in the playoffs. You know, playing at MSG in the first round would have been pretty cool for a lot of our guys on the road. And then at Philly, it's I've told the guys before, there's nothing like playoff hockey in Philly. It's crazy. You're going in the summertime, and it's amazing. So yeah, it would have been cool, but you live and you learn, and we get to put our best foot forward for this year, and it's exciting to get back there. I think we've been itching. It's a long summer, and you want to get back.
Yeah, well,
Colby, do you want to tell him, or should I?
I could tell you this, Lots. Johnny and I had a bet I don't remember when it was. It was probably around, I don't know.
I think it was like February.
And I bet him, I bet dinner at Catch that you guys would make the playoffs. Jonny took the other side of that bet. And he even gave me chance. Well, listen, he's the biggest Rangers super fan you ever met, but
there you go. I only agreed to do the show because I knew you were on it.
Yeah, well, and then I had to mess with Jonny when he's like, "Yeah, have you ever met Scott Laughton?" I'm like, "Nah, I think I passed by him in the hallway a couple of times, but I've never actually."
Well, when Loth said you were a great guy, I was wondering if he actually ever met you.
No, obviously didn't know me very well, right? But so I was riding with you guys, and honestly, like one of the turning points for me was when Torts actually did that whole, having Hazy's back. I thought that was it. I was sort of slowly changing my perception about Torts. And look, I've known Cam forever. So Cam has a point of view on Torts that's on one extreme. And then Tony D has a view on Torts that's probably the other extreme. And then there's guys that are all in the middle, right? So, I was kind of like, look, I've never really met him. I've never played for him, obviously, but I've met him. But I was just unsure. And time after time, I found myself like, wow, like I really agree with that. And I really appreciate that. And that's like pretty good honesty. And then when he went out on a limb for Hazy, like that just sort of, it really changed my perception because I was just like, wow, like I know Hazy and him, they butted heads. For him to still do that, it shows you that it's not personal with him. He has an expectation on the ice and it's not personal. And that's a lot with Danny. I had that conversation with Danny. We were at Caden Briere's birthday party, and it was right after the whole Sean Couturier thing. And, I said to Danny, like, how are you managing that? Like Sean Couturier and you really go back, like you guys have deep ties together. And he said, like, it's never personal with Torts. It's about hockey and he lets him do his thing. And so it was interesting to be back in the market last year, Scott. Like, obviously we moved back. Otherwise, we'd see each other in Chicago here and there, but it definitely changed my point of view on him. So I'm glad you brought that up because I think that media people do that kind of shit all the time. And seeing Torts go on a limb and do that, it touched some part of my heart that I was like, wow, okay. Like I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And that's the thing. He has your back and like you said, it's not personal. He's trying to do what he thinks is best for the team at that time. And everyone's gotten it at some point throughout the year. You're going to get it at some time. And I think it's how you handle it too. And I think guys have done a good job. Guys have a ton of respect for Torts in the room and the staff. So it's you're itching to get back at it. It's a long summer watching the playoffs and seeing all that, and so it's exciting to get back.
I don't know how I'm going to phrase this, but with you guys having a lot of younger players in the team, Colby and our producer Vic always give me shit for like the way that I speak sometimes, even though I'm 28, like I'm not really a young guy anymore, but no, Colby's much older than I am. Is there ever a time where like, Brink or Forrester or York and Drysdale, like they're just kind of shooting the shit and you overhear it or Torts overhears it and goes like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Like just with the modern lingo or language that some of the kids have now, I got to imagine there's like a funny interaction with Torts in there or you somehow.
Yeah, I think just on a day-to-day basis, some of the stuff that some of the younger guys say or the older guys say, Torts will just kind of walk by and tell you to shut the fuck up. Something like that. Like just something funny. Like you're always laughing about it too. Like it's it's different, I think. But you have those interactions throughout the year. TK is pretty good at stirring them up. And we had one clip in Tampa this year. It was the cup ceremony in Tampa, and Torts was a coach there. So TK was giving him some jabs about that throughout.
Didn't he get ejected that game?
But yeah, it's been really good.
Isn't that the game he got thrown out of?
Oh no, boys, we're frozen again.
Oh no. Let us know when we're back.
Well, you can hear the sincerity behind it with Scott, the way he's talking about him. And there's a reason that teams are always wanting to trade for you, and the Flyers just continually say no. And it's not for lack of good offers. It's not. They get good offers for you. But Danny's basically told teams, if you want this guy, you're going to have to pay a king's ransom just because of how important you are to the locker room. So just kind of hearing you talk about this stuff and getting to see it, we were neighbors. And so we spent a lot of time at least around one another. And so I got to sort of see it. What did you make of the whole Travis Konechny? He gets the big deal, which I'm super pumped for him. I think it's well-deserved. I think it's a great deal, but I loved how Sanheim tweeted, and I know you're not a big social media guy, but I'm sure you saw it. He tweeted some like sarcastic report, and then like 4 minutes later, they announced it. I mean, I assume you were well-versed in what was going on there.
Yeah, I saw it actually after the fact. I saw it like maybe an hour later, so I texted TK right away, but then I saw it on Twitter. But Sandy's always the guy in the room, like breaking trades, like guys sign, he's right away, like the first guy to say it. So it's like, it's actually pretty fitting. And they probably talked about it. They live across the street from each other. Like they go everywhere together. So they're not too far apart wherever you see them. But yeah, it was hilarious. I actually tweeted at him, Bobby. We're like Bob McKenzie. We call him Bob McKenzie because he breaks everything. So we were on the bus one time. You were probably still living in Philly, but we were on the bus and I just signed, and then Raph got traded. And then we were on the bus.
To Dallas, right? I was, because I was living there when that happened. Yep.
Yeah, so we were on the bus, and Eric Gustafson got traded, but he had no idea. And of course, Sandy's like, "Hey, man, like, what's going on?" And then he's like, "I don't know, like, I'm going on the bus." And he's like, "Yeah, I think he got traded." So he broke that one to Gussie, but no, he's always the first guy to be right on it. So we gave him the insider nickname.
He's getting. Did his wedding happen already, or is that in the next couple weekends?
That's this weekend, yeah.
So that'll probably be a good time. We were just with Reamer in Woodstock a couple weekends ago, and he said his last run of the summer was way up north to Sanheim's wedding. So I'm sure you guys won't have any fun at that event.
Yeah, I'm gonna go see Reamer after and work out with him and skate with him a little bit in Minnesota. So it'll be nice to go down and see him for the first time in a little bit.
He's got a really good pad there in Minnesota. Like he went all in on that house.
This guy's Michael Jordan in that house. I couldn't believe it walking around that place. He brought us there a couple of years ago during the year. I was in shock. His gym is massive.
Between how meticulous he is and how exquisite Lauren's taste is, they weren't going to miss the beat in that house.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I actually want to, stay on that trade deadline thing really quick, because I saw a tweet. I always look up funny things on Twitter, or I try to whenever we guest on. And I saw a girl named Steph tweeted on March 18th, 2022. Why is no one talking about the fact that poor Scott Laughton keeps losing his best friends at the trade deadline? And I'm just curious if that's an actual trend of yours, and maybe who is the hardest to see go.
It is a trend, and but also when you're going into year 11 with the same team, I think obviously there's a lot of turnover, and throughout you see it. Just looking at old pictures of teams and how many guys are still left there and stuff like that. But the hardest for me was Raph, for sure. He was at my wedding party. He's one of a kind, and one of the funniest guys I've ever met. So right after I signed, he got traded, and then I was just like, oh no, I hung out with him every road trip. We lived together in the same building as Colby, and we just spent a ton of time together. Like, we'd always go down to the pool, sauna, steam, we'd hang out every single day. So that was tough. And then throughout the years, guys like Robert Hagg and Ghost, and there's so many guys that got traded near that time that even the summer trades. So you're riding the bike or something. I remember riding the bike, and they're like, my trainer came up to me. He's like, "Hey, Gudis just got traded." I'm like, "Oh fuck," he was in the same building. Because we had 6 guys in the same building, so we were always together, driving everywhere together. So once that got depleted, I got out of there and then moved away. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough seeing guys go, especially guys you build relationships with, and JVR is one of those guys that you just know you're going to have a lifelong friendship with, and you make new connections as well, and guys that come in that are really good guys too. It's hard to find a bad guy in hockey.
Yeah, Radko, we physically lived on the same floor. I mean, they were the best. I mean, I thought it was so cool when Florida won the Stanley Cup and they're interviewing Paul Maurice right after they win the cup. Yeah. And he brings up Radko's name in his like championship interview. And I thought that was kind of speaking to, did we lose you again, Lots? Are you with us, or you got us? We might be a little frozen. Because
I will say, when I was texting Scotty today, he said, he asked if we could do the show tomorrow because his wife quit the computer. So he's on his phone. And
you got us? So
yeah, I got you again. Sorry.
I was saying, I thought it was unreal how Paul Maurice gave Gudas a shout out in his post Stanley Cup interview. Because you just see how much that guy, people just think, oh, he's like a goon. Like, he means so much to a room. I mean, it's like he's such a valuable guy. And Haig was like that, a valuable guy, and Roth. I mean, those guys were all salt of the earth type of guys. I remember when he got traded, I was like coming home and he was like leaving to go get his car to go to the airport. And it's just, you're right. It's hard to see, but you've been with the Flyers 11 years. I can't imagine the names that have come and gone since you've been there, but smart move to get out of there, because that building, I think, was probably cursed.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And like you said, like Goody and all these guys that you, like, every guy I talk to is like, oh, Goody, like whatever, because the way he plays and hits guys. But it's like, you meet this guy, he's the nicest guy in the world.
Best guy.
Like, and everyone loves him that plays with him. And that just goes to show, like, what Maurice said about him, because it's so true about that guy, and he brings people together. So, and I love Maurice's shirt at the parade with the 2 cats on the. I thought that was pretty cool.
His wife she would make like stews, like they're obviously they're European. They eat sort of different, whatever. She would make these like crazy stews, and they would take all the bones, and he would come over, or someone would come over and give them to my dog. Like, they'd be like, oh, we're going to throw these out. We might as well give them to your dog. Like, they were just really thoughtful people, really thoughtful people. So I was happy when he got paid. I know he's out in Cali now paying big taxes, but at least he got paid. So good for him. He's a guy. It's easy to root for Radko Gudas.
100%.
It's funny, actually. I have one Radko Gudas story. I interviewed him on Stanley Cup Final Media Day in 2023, and we asked every player that we talked to how much they think the cup weighs. And everyone usually guessed like around 30 pounds or like 40 pounds. He said 85. I was like, dude, like, if you win that thing, I hope you're prepared to lift it then, 85 pounds.
But kilos.
Yeah, it's insane. But Scotty, I want to like rewind back to last season, those last 3 games. You guys win 2 to stay alive in the final game. And I know obviously it's a tough pill to swallow the way you guys lost to Washington to end the year. And I'm sure it was hard to talk about it, after the fact. But in that moment, were you still, obviously I think you guys lost like 7 or 8 in a row, like kind of prior to those 3. Were you still able to see the positives, even though the year ended the way it did? Like, are you still appreciative of how it went, or is it still kind of now a chip on your shoulder for next year and you guys really had it and let it slip? Which kind of view do you have on it?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both, honestly. Like, I think we know we can do it, and guys believe that in the room. And I think that's the first step is belief within your room. You look at the guys around the room and it's there. So I think that's huge to have, especially some of the games we won throughout the year against big teams and on the road, 11 forwards sometimes. Like, we won some big games and guys stepped up. So I think you always have to have that chip on your shoulder, and I think we're starting to get back to that, where we're going into buildings and we know we can beat a team, even if people aren't saying it. I think we have that inner belief. So I think, yeah, that's huge, and you take some positives from it. I think it's still pretty hard to take some positives after you miss the playoffs again. And everyone's, I know we're in a little bit of a rebuild and stuff, but I think for guys to get that experience, I know I got into a couple games in 2014, and then I got into the playoffs in 2016 against Pittsburgh. We weren't able to get out of the first round, but having that and just going back to that and feeling the energy in Philadelphia was special. So I think the start of the year is huge for us, but to just maintain that consistency that I think we had this year. I know we lose 8 in a row, but in the years past, we've been way more inconsistent and haven't really strung wins together. So I think that's a big part of our team is to be able to do that.
Well, and I think anytime you lose your starting goalie abruptly in the middle of a season, I mean, that's I know it's not something people really talk about because it's like so persona non grata, and I'm not, we're not going there by any means, but you lose a starting goaltender. I mean, that's a real thing. How many teams can survive that? It's not easy. And now this year you guys will have, you know what your goaltending situation looks like. You know what Sam Urson can do. He's got a lot more experience. You've got this freaking massive Russian guy that we'll see, give him opportunity to get through a training camp and a preseason and adjust. Last year, I think it's really difficult to just drop a guy in like that, especially in those situations. I don't think it was, I understand why they did it, but I don't think it's overly fair. So I think there'll be opportunity for you guys. And then I think it's going to be exciting. You've got this new Russian kid coming in. Danny took a risk drafting him. I think this was probably a kid who goes top 2 or 3 if teams knew how quickly he'd be able to come in. And I know between you and Coots and the rest of the vets, you guys will make this guy feel as at home as you possibly can. It's never easy coming from overseas. I played overseas. I know what it's like to need a translator. It's a difficult situation, but look, I think it'll be another opportunity for you guys. And I'm personally looking forward to seeing Michkov and the goaltender and, these young guys a year better, a year more used to Torts. I hope you guys can be exciting this year. It's more fun to live in this city, in this, suburb, in this town when you guys are a good hockey team. So I'm hoping for the best for you guys.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. And I think it is exciting and exciting for the fans too, to have him come over and see what he's all about. And he's still so young. So I think there's got to be some patience there and let him get over. I'm not sure how much English he speaks either. So I think that's tough, but he's got some good guys there. Fedotov and Zamula, who's a great guy, who's been around us for quite some time now. So I think the comfortability level will be there, and we'll open the door and welcome him with open arms, because I think we all know what he can do on the ice, and excited. But I think there should be some patience there too with the start of the year and see how it goes.
Maybe we're gonna call him a bust 3 games in if he doesn't have a goal.
DJ Lotz will have to find some sort of Russian jingle for him once he scores his first goal, or you get that first win when he's got a lot of money on the board after that miserable first pitch at the Citizens Bank the other day. So
yeah, I can get it going.
Exactly. Anybody who knows you will not have any concerns that you won't find some good music and some good win songs for that team. So look, Scotty, we appreciate you coming on.
I got one more. I got one more.
Well, every time I do this, you got to ask one more, and it's usually a dumb question. So ask him the last question, and then let's let him enjoy the rest of his summer. Okay, Johnny?
And it definitely is dumb, but it's also kind of hot seat. Scotty, does the date January 11th, 2025 mean anything to you?
I'm pretty sure I know what it is, but yeah.
Yeah, what is it?
I think Anaheim comes into town.
All right, that proves my point. Okay, the Cutter Gauthier game is on the calendar. It's marked down. It's marked down. See, I didn't even want to tell him what it was. The fact that he knows it says everything.
No, it's because he's going to see Radko. It's one of his best buddies.
Yeah,
it's Goody.
We already scheduled dinner the night before.
Fair enough. All right, fair enough. We're gonna cut the Gudis part out of it and make it seem like you got Cutter Gauthier marked down on the calendar.
It'll be Radicchio pregame meal and prime. What's the place right on Rittenhouse, the steakhouse where they do the knife presentation?
Oh, Barclay Prime.
What a
spot.
They stopped doing the knife presentation, by the way.
I know,
they don't do that anymore, which is kind of disappointing.
I know, that was a nice touch. Best bread going though, and yeah.
Those popovers are money. So look, thanks for doing it. Say hi to your better half. Enjoy the wedding. I know you guys have that coming up. I'm sure that'll be, I said, that'll be a blast. And see you when you get back here in a couple of weeks. And we'll be looking forward to watching you get off to a good start. And hopefully we're not hearing you're not on the top of Frank Saravalli's trade targets board this year. So you don't have you don't have to worry, and your buddy Bob McKenzie can take it easy on you with the trade rumors.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on, and sorry about my Wi-Fi.
You're all right. I explained while you were frozen that the wife took the computer for the night, so you were stuck on your phone.
Yeah, I don't have a computer. I got my phone on a book right now.
That's all right. That's all right. We appreciate it, man. Have a good rest of your summer, all right?
Thanks, guys.
So, yeah, super humble guy. I mean, one of the more humble players that have been in the NHL and you know, kind of had to do it the hard way. This is a guy who was a first-round pick, and they didn't just say, here's the first line in the power play. Now these guys, they don't want to sign because they're worried about their power play time as a rookie. Lots had to go play in the American League. He had a fight. He started on the fourth line. He worked his way up. I mean, I watched it kind of all happen. You know, I always kind of kept an eye on the Flyers. So, you know, it's good to see that after even 11 years and success, like you still see the same sort of fun, humble guy. And you know, it's a reason that the Flyers never trade him when teams are offering a first-round pick for him. There's a reason for that. So
I'm so pissed that I didn't put the Gudis thing together when I was going to ask that last question. I thought it would be pretty funny if the fact that he knew they were playing Anaheim that night was pretty funny. That I had that.
Well, him and Radko, those guys did, like, they were always together in the building. You'd see them doing everything together. Him, Raffl, Gudis in particular. And so I'm sure when the schedule comes out, that's one of the first things you do is you look to see when you have West Coast friends that you're only going to see one or two times. That's like one of the first things you look at. So I'm sure when he saw it, he kind of laughed about the Gauthier thing, but I'd be willing to bet it was more
he probably didn't even care. Yeah, he probably didn't even care.
He's not the kind of guy that gives a shit about that stuff, you know? You could see how laid back he is.
But I didn't want to ask, like, oh, are you guys pissed about Cutter Gauthier? I wanted to, like, make it a fun way, and I didn't even think about it.
But he knew. He knew. He laughed.
We could twist it.
He laughed because he knew that's where your dumbass was going to go with it. And I shouldn't even say dumbass. I'll give you more credit than that. I won't.
Pretty smart.
I won't beat you up too hard on that. So it's good talking to him. You know, good to connect with him. And you know,
got to shout out DZ though, friend of the show, Michael Delzato. He actually put me in the group chat with Scotty to come on. So shout out DZ. He's the best. But yeah. Great time talking to Scotty.
Yeah, they played in Philly together. They're both Toronto type of guys. So
Scotty has been very nice to me. I've only been in the Flyers locker room like twice on game days and stuff, and he's always been one of the nicer
guys. He's just a normal, he's just a normal guy that you'd want to go play golf with. You want to go drink beers with. He doesn't act too big for anyone, anything, anytime. Wife is super cool, super down to earth. Like, you know, they're good, solid people. So again, we try to bring people on our show that you know we can root for during the season. He's definitely one of them. So we'll see what happens with the Flyers this year. I mean, the one thing he did say, which I really do agree with when it comes to Michkov, is that this is a 19-year-old kid who, you know, we're talking about saving a franchise. And, you know, I hope people do realize that they need to temper some level of their expectations. Like, this is not a North American player. You've got to give this kid a little bit of time. Like, and I'm sure it's not going to happen because fans in Philly here are not the most patient group of individuals. But I do think that, it's not going to be a perfectly smooth road with Michkov. I don't see any world where it is.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I mean, but again, hockey fans are hockey fans, and there's going to be overreactions all the time. So it's not something that like we can set a boundary on, right? Like it's going to happen.
Listen, it'll give us something to talk about, so we're not going to be mad about it. Couple of other house cleaning items, Johnny, before we kind of wrap the show up. Marty Necas, 2 years, $6.5 million a year. That walks him into being a UFA. So again, in this situation, I think he probably, if he wanted to take a longer term deal with Carolina, I think he probably could have got more money. I think he had to give up some cash in order to get a contract that led him into being a UFA. Like that is what every player dreams of. I want to be a UFA the day I'm allowed to be a UFA. You don't want a team to eat up your UFA years. Like Brock Faber, he's losing 3 years of being a UFA under his new deal, right? He'll be a UFA, but 3 years later than he could have been to get potentially the ginormous deal. So it's a win for Necas because he gets a raise. Can you look up how old Necas is, Vic, while we're talking, if you don't mind? This deal, 2 years, walks him right into UFA. Frank told us on social media that he's 25, so he'll be 27. Frank told us on social media that there was a deal apparently in place with Buffalo, but Necas was not willing to sign an extension there, which I don't blame him. Why would you ever sign an extension anywhere when you're in the situation that Necas is? Take a bridge deal, go check out what's out there. Maybe you try a new place, but then go cash in as a UFA on the open market wherever you want. I think Necas played this really, really well, gets a massive raise. He's going to make $13 million the next 2 years. Then he's a UFA. The cap should be up another, $10 million at that point, right? So a guy who's worth $6.5 million today, just by default, if they continue, is $8.5, $9 million in 2 more seasons, right? This year, next year, and then free agent. Like he could be a $9 million forward based on where the cap is heading, based on what his production is. That's a lot. It's also
good. I think it's good for Carolina too. Like they could use a guy like him still. I thought he was one of the better players. I agree. The Rangers.
I think with who they've walked away from and lost, I think they needed to retain him and keep him. Now, granted, if you would have gotten McGroarty, Perfetti, and a pick, all of a sudden you're like, okay, like, because I do think Rutger McGroarty is going to be a stud in the NHL. Like, I don't think he's going to be a 120-point guy, but
what's going on with him?
I just don't think a deal has been made. Look, it was explained to me from a GM that when you have a guy that says, I'm not signing with you and I want to be traded, their value goes from 100 to 75 immediately. Okay. And I think you could look at potentially look at Cutter Gauthier, Jamie Drysdale. You didn't get a 1-for-1 with Gauthier and Drysdale. You got a 1 for 3/4 of a 1. That sort of matches. Drysdale is not the same caliber. He's just not.
He's good. He's solid.
Good, but he's a 75% of what Gauthier could be at 100%, right? So I think the problem right now is Winnipeg's like, we're not in a rush and we're not willing to take 75%, 75 cents on the dollar with McGroarty. So I think that's why it hasn't happened. So we'll see what happens. It could happen anytime. I assume maybe trade deadline next year would be my guess. Especially because Winnipeg is a team that's going to be thinking they're in contention like they've been. They haven't gotten it done, but they think that they will be. And you'd think with their goalie and other pieces that they'll be there. Their pieces are signed long-term. They freed up a little space this summer as well. So, I like the move. I think it's a good deal, better deal for the player. But also Carolina locks him up for 2 years. And
I think it's good on both sides.
It works. It does. It's a workable deal. I think Tulsky did a nice job, or maybe the owner did a nice job. You never really know who's physically making that decision. So that's one. Eric Staal, Johnny, 1-day contract as a Hurricane, set to retire. What a career for this guy. I would assume we agree on the fact that he's a Hall of Famer.
Yes.
Okay. We don't need to debate that. You look at the fact that he had, 1,063 points, 1,300 games, gold medal, Stanley Cup, was a captain. The whole Pavelski versus Staal thing. I don't think you're not comparing the same, even really close to the same thing.
No.
And I think, Staal's probably a first ballot Hall of Famer, in my opinion. I don't know if you agree or disagree.
No, I agree. I agree. But no, what do you say?
Go ahead.
I just think Eric Staal was more. I don't want to discredit Pavelski, but in Eric Staal's prime was more of a dominant presence.
I agree, and a captain of his team, and you're right, dominant presence on both sides of the puck.
Mm-hmm.
Not one-dimensional.
He's massive.
He's a horse. Physical, in your face, power forward with elite level skill, right? I mean, a guy who could play in the playoffs, a guy who could dump it in and beat you up, a guy who could walk you and make you look stupid. I mean, just had no weaknesses to his game. Mm-hmm. He was a total package.
One of my favorite memories as a kid was watching that 2009 Game 7 Hurricanes versus Devils in Jersey. The Canes are down by 1 with like 2 minutes to go. I think it was UC Jokinen who tied the game, and then Staal, like 30 seconds later, comes down the far side and goes low blocker on Brodeur to give the Canes a lead with like 30 seconds to go. It was the craziest ending to a Game 7 I've ever seen. And my best friend is a big Devils fan, so I remember watching that game and just giving him so much shit in school the next day. Like we were in 7th grade, but that was awesome. That's probably like the most memorable Eric Staal goal that I could think of. I don't know if you have another one that stands out.
Nothing jumps out. Nothing jumps out. So, but we'll be seeing him in the Hall of Fame sooner than later. Well deserved, hell of a career. Good to see his number retired. He's a legend there. I think Carolina made a nice, smart decision to get this done.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to give a quick shout out, Colby, to one of our lovely sponsors, OutWest. Summertime just got a little bit sweeter thanks to the guys over at OutWest. That's right, everybody. As we mentioned earlier, this year, OutWest has released a brand new collection featuring 2 new hoodies and 6 stylish polos. But here's the catch. Some styles are flying off the shelves faster than expected. So head over to www.outwestgolf.com and use our code Cuppa, CUPPA, in all caps for 15% of your first order before they're gone.
Well, the last topic I do want to talk about here, and it's a controversial thing, and it was the Stan Bowman becoming the general manager of the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, we're a little late on this one, I feel like, because it happened right after we finished recording last week. So everyone's talked about it. I don't think it was the best decision in the world to hire him right away, but I'm a guy who believes in second chances. And I think we've talked about it a lot on this show. I thought Tyler actually had a really good point on Twitter when it happened right away. Like Tyler's another guy who believes in second chances, but I still don't know if Bowman is like the best fit for this job right now.
Well, let me just say this. Yeah. A lot of the moves that are being criticized in Chicago, and having worked in Chicago and worked with Stan in Chicago, the more I was in Chicago, the more I learned that John McDonough was a tyrant of a president and was an absolute dictator and was involved in ticket sales, was involved in day-to-day, was going into trying to get Joel Quenneville to do things as the head coach. And there were times where he would walk into Stan Bowman's office and say, "You are trading this player. You are bringing this. Go get Brandon Saad. I don't care what it costs. We're not paying this player." So, we talk about in Carolina how the owner kind of can veto the GM, right? Obviously, an owner can do that, but most owners don't meddle day to day. Look, John McDonough was meddling in the day-to-day hockey operations of Stan Bowman while he was the general manager and John McDonough was there. So you can criticize moves, and every GM has bad moves, every single one. Okay. I had a general manager that traded for me for a guy who played 850 or 900 games in the National Hockey League, Matt Hunwick. Okay. 1-for-1 traded for me. Okay. People make horrible trades all the time. Now, look, criticize some of those moves. Fine. But some of the bad things that happen in Chicago from a hockey standpoint, we're not talking about Kyle Beach, we're talking about some of the trades and the moves. These are things that were done over his head, and he'll never publicly say that, but I worked there for multiple years. People that were there the whole time talked about it, and I'm just telling you, you can't just point fingers at him. The other stuff we're not talking about, we're not getting into. It's been lived and it's been relived, and I'm with you. The guy paid a price. He's getting a second opportunity. Kyle Beach blessed the second opportunity.
They spoke to each other.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're not drowning on about that. We're not going to drown on and talk about a situation that's done and been talked about, and people have done and paid their prices and lost jobs, whatever. Hockey wise, you can criticize, he goes out and he gets Marc-Andre Fleury, which was the only bright light on the team that year. Look, when you feel like you're probably close to losing potentially your job, or you need to salvage something, you go out and you try to make big moves. All right. People criticize the Seth Jones trade. You got rid of Boquist, who is now an American leaguer. Yes, you gave up some picks, which have turned into good young pros. Sillinger, I believe, one of them. And the kid from Michigan, Kent Johnson, I believe the other. We'll see if they pan out to be star players. We still don't know. But what I do know is Seth Jones is going to make the Four Nations team and probably the Olympic team. I think so. Seth Jones plays on a horrible team in Chicago. He's a good player. When Chicago is good again, Seth Jones, people are going to remember how good he is.
We didn't even pull up that chart of the highest paid defenseman that you wanted to touch on, didn't you?
Yeah, we didn't talk about it. But look, I'm just saying, I like Seth Jones more than other people do. I think he's a good player. I think he's been in a horrible situation. He gets brought to Chicago, and then all of a sudden it's a blow-up rebuild within 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, he's never really been on a good team.
And so put him on a good team, put him in a good structured situation. Him and Zach Werenski were one of the most dominant pairs in the NHL for a year. He was
on that Columbus team that upset Tampa, right?
Yeah. And him and Zach Werenski played on another level. There's a reason Jones is always on the best U.S. teams that have really good defensemen. So I don't think that move is as ugly and as bad as a lot of people do. I just don't. And I think some of the moves that happened way back that people blame Stan and say were bad moves, I think some of those things happened over his head. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve a little bit of the criticism, because he does, as does everybody, but I'm going to defend him. And I think he's going to do a good job in Edmonton. And honestly, I was happy that he got the job. That guy has been a hockey lifer. His family are hockey lifers. He was, doing the work. The guy did the work to deserve another opportunity. And that's going to be it. I think we're going to try to have him on the show at some point, and I think he'll come on. I had a great working relationship with him in Chicago. I really did. So hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to him at some point. I hope he can get Edmonton into a good spot. We saw how great it was to have McDavid in a cup final last year. That was incredible. I want that more. I want him more in prime time. I say that all the time. So that was it, Johnny. We hit all the news that has been. We do these once a week. Right now it's the 30th. It's Tuesday evening. We're going to drop this show tomorrow morning, Wednesday, 9 a.m. Go ahead, Johnny.
I do have one more thing just before we wrap it up. I wanted to give what? No, this is actually serious though. I want to give a major shout out to the Shoulder Check Showcase. I got to go last Thursday. It was awesome. An event that brings more awareness to mental health. Thanks to a young man named Hayden Thorson. There are a lot of NHL stars there. Trevor Zegras, Charlie McAvoy, Chris Kreider, all the guys from the Rangers, Matt Rempe, Jonathan Quick, Shaddy was there. Shane Pinto, a lot of big NHL names and influencers as well, like Swaggy P and Coach Chippy, and the place was sold out. Terry Connors rink in Stamford, Connecticut. There were a lot of people showing up. It was just a great night in the hockey community, all for a really, really good cause as well. Ardo Cal was the MC of the event from ESPN. Just a really fun night for a really good cause. A lot of the players went to Sally's Pizza after in Connecticut, which was nice. I met Shaddy there, but
you're not familiar with Sally's?
I've never had it before.
Oh, wow.
Sally's so my first time there. It was delicious.
Sally's and Pepe's are two of the best pizza places in the freaking world.
It was amazing, but it was only the second year that the event's ever been put on. So I wanted to just try to bring more awareness to it and talk about it a little bit more, because it really is all about just checking in on your friends. You never know what people are really going through. And the whole saying throughout the night was that kindness is a contact sport. We talk about shoulder checking and how it's used in hockey as a physical way to separate somebody from yourself. But in this sense of the word, shoulder checking is, putting your hand on someone else's shoulder and just letting them know that you're there from them. A very touching speech by Dave Maloney, the New York Rangers broadcaster and former captain, legend. Just a really nice evening in the hockey community. So I really just wanted to talk about it. I had a blast of a time. I got to catch up with some players like Zegras, like Shaddy, and Jonathan Quick. So if anyone is in the New York area, the Connecticut area next summer that is looking to go there or get involved in some sort, you can reach out to me, and I will help direct you into how to get there next year, because it'll be the third year of the event. It'll be way more popular, and people in the news are talking about it, and there was a lot of coverage there. So it was really just an awesome time, and hopefully next year you can go, Colby, as well.
Maybe I'll dust off my skates and I'll try to play in the game. Those are fun to play in when you're surrounded by such good players. I don't do it very often, but those are the types of things that I'll
friend of the show, Frank Frachano, played too. I didn't mention his name. He had like 4 goals.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, look, good show today. Vic, good job. No chat. So we're not going to say thanks to you guys. We miss you guys. We'll see you guys soon in October. It's coming quickly. We'll be back next week, Wednesday, 9 a.m. We're not sure with who yet, but you'll have to make sure you're download on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get it. Throw automatic downloads on so you're working with us. If you're on YouTube, like, subscribe. You guys know the drill. You've been with us for a while now, and that's all we got for today. We'll see you guys next week.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.